Welcome to the Not So Great Tennis Podcast. You think everyone's saying that? The Great Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, along with co-host Ivan Ozerets.
Hello.
We're going to call up Davey Anderson. He was on several weeks ago. He's been on many, many times. We got to do the fourth leg of his do's and don'ts. A man who needs no introduction to listeners from previous podcast. If not, he's a very, very successful tennis coach. He's been doing it a long time, and he has a track record to prove it. Plus, he's the second best tennis teacher from his neighborhood in Minot, North Dakota. We got one ring, two rings.
Hello.
Davey Anderson, Minot, North Dakota. Steve, along with Yvonne, the Not So Great Tennis Podcast. What's going on?
Hey, Dave.
Hey guys, how you doing? We're going to change that tonight.
All right.
We're going to make it the Great Tennis Podcast.
That's good. That's good. You were on several weeks ago, and
Yeah.
on the cover of Racket Sports Industry,
Yeah.
there's a lengthy interview with the CEO of the USTA. In the last paragraph, first of all, the question: what makes you confident the USTA can succeed in its newly stated mission? Last paragraph, first sentence: we do a phenomenal job. Second sentence, it does say the foundation does an incredible job. I truly believe we have the team to make our goals a reality, and I'm confident that we will. More power to them. But now we got to move on to administration. I would say that if you're the CEO of the USTA, you would be the chief executive officer.
Positive.
You got it.
Yeah.
Take the high road with you got to believe, baby. I think Yvonne.
Yeah, you got to have it. You got to have that plan, like we talked about a few weeks ago. You got to have the GPS, and then be ready to do the hard yards.
Yeah. So do's and don'ts. We got another do's and don'ts. We started with parents, then we went to players, and we went to coaches. And I said, we need one to do for administrators, managers, directors, owners, operators. The do's and don'ts. And actually, you can just flip-flop it. So if you're supposed to do this, that means you can just turn around and don't do this. But Yvonne, why don't you read number one to us?
All right. Developing a culture inside of the instructional program is a must. Common denominators throughout the staff from top to bottom builds a better product and service.
Take it away, Anderson.
Yeah, I think back to when we were sitting at a restaurant. Steve and I was kind of had for the most part a non-speaking role in Boca and in those meetings, and it was Arthur Cohen, one of the owners, and a few other people, and that was just one comment I think I did make, and to stress the importance of unifying the staff in terms of an education that people could go court to court and receive sound instructional advice, and I think that has been a huge part of why Brookhaven has been able to do a pretty good job of things over the years, with not just player development as it relates to juniors, but the adult programs. All the pros have their own way of communicating, et cetera, but the information as a whole, from the way that people are trying to hit a ball to the way they're trying to play doubles, it's very much a systematic approach, and it's a quality service. It's kind of like, it seems like when you go to McDonald's in up where you are, or you come to a McDonald's here in Dallas, you're gonna, when you order a cheeseburger and fries, it's gonna taste the same. And I think that clubs where they don't have that, where they don't have a common thread running through their staff, I think that it's very, very different. I think people tend not to work together as well. The pros, I think that the confusion that the members feel is certainly real. And, I believe that those common threads really help any organization. I think a lot of people do have a system anyways. They really don't know it. And sometimes the system isn't based on a lot of efficiency. But yeah, just those kind of little things. I know, from the management end here, the club manager, whether it's name tags and such like that. I know people like Vandermeer had the pros wearing matching Adidas outfits or clothing on particular days of the week. Anything to increase the level of professionalism, I think really helps the staff.
Yeah, so many things. When you say McDonald's, what is the name of the place that the juniors really like? ChickfilA?
ChickfilA, yeah.
ChickfilA. I've taught a lot of students from the LDS Church, Latter-day Saints, which I one time tell people all the time. I was with the late Tommy Fye, and this woman asked me, "Are you LDS?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so. Everybody is. Learning disabled student." So if I gives me the elbow, she's asking you if you're a Mormon. So the Mormons, I don't know what they do, electric shock, but the 99.5% of the kids are just super. Their behavior is just super. So I said, I was at Chick-fil-A one time, and I said, it's like every kid who's here I think they're from the LDS Church because they're all just so polite and so well behaved. So there's a lot to be said for that. With, you could paint a picture for us for Brookhaven. You were on several weeks ago, and you mentioned, I was at your place for a couple of months. I think that's because I don't think I was ever there for a couple of months. I know my son was, but I've been there enough to go walk in, and there's like a little booth to the right, and there's a nice lady there having a glass of wine, and she's running the leagues. But Brookhaven,
Mm-hmm.
I've been there dealing more with helping you with the coaches and the players. But you look around, and there's all sorts of league matches. And tell us about, or paint a picture for Brookhaven. And I think too many times people think what we're connected to is just forehands and backhands.
Yeah, I mean, it's a multifaceted operation, and I by no means am a critical cog in that wheel in all of those facets. Years ago, before Billy Freer and I even got here, Dave Ware was there. Dave Ware serves as the director of Racket Sports now. In the absence of Billy Freer. And he has a mammoth job. There's huge components to it that operate, so many different ladies and men's leagues that are going really year round now. As you know, USTA leagues really didn't used to run year round. Now it's year round. We have our own version of, I know in Boca they used to call it Palm Beach County. Here it's called TCD. Tennis Competitors of Dallas. Just the league play alone and the scheduling of it and the coordinating of it is a huge effort. And on top of that, just the day in and day out responsibilities of maintaining a facility like that. It's like keeping a cruise ship, running and operating well. Whether it's water jugs, windscreens, blowing leaves, maintaining the clay. And we're fortunate. We have maintenance staff that is always on duty, always on their toes and keeping the place clean. But again, overseen by Dave Ware, who, that's one of his functions there. And then I think one of the most unsung heroes of any club, to me, is the person sitting at the pro shop, running the desk. And some of the smaller clubs, I know that it's coaches or it's pros there that are, subsidizing their income through that, or maybe that's just their responsibility. But in our case, the people that are at the pro shop, taking phone calls, which is endless, and ringing up pro shop sales, helping people find courts that are visiting, because we have nonstop visitation from outside league play when they're coming to play our teams. That is probably, in my opinion, one of the hardest jobs on the facility, and I think it sometimes isn't maybe given the respect, almost like teaching early childhood isn't given the respect in our tennis teaching industry. I think that the pro shop manager, the person that's in charge of that, is a huge part, a huge piece of the success of the club. And we're fortunate. We have a veteran there who's been doing it. Sarah has been there for years, decades now, almost doing it. So, but it's a busy place, nonstop. And now with the addition of, I don't know how many pickleball courts, more than I can count on my feet or hands, but, and padel, there's a different group of people that we have to get to know, in order to keep the club running well.
Oh, then you have the restaurants, the golf, the exercise. What's the name of it? Jordan Spieth. Is that it?
Yeah, Jordan Spieth. Yeah, we have 3 18-hole golf courses. So, there's really a golf course for young kids and more of a par 3 with a couple of par 4s. And that's really where Spieth honed his game as a young boy. And then Joey Anders is the head of the instruction for the golf, and he's still here today. Does an amazing job building more Jordan Spieth. He's had a team that just won the PGA Junior Nationals, so he cranks them out. He's got a system.
I'll come back to the front desk, but let's go on a little bit of a tangent. Jordan Spieth, I believe he went to the Jesuit school, then he went to Texas. He's a football player. Doesn't he have a sister with special needs? Tell us a little about. He's a champion.
Yeah, for sure. Family is solid as a rock. I don't know the exact stories of how, but I know that his mom and dad have been really, really involved in his professional career, helping him navigate the waters. A lot of sharks out there when you're that level. And I think the mother gave up her full-time job to basically say, hey, we're gonna get through this thing together, so that there's not really a lot of mistakes made along the way.
I heard the story. I'm sure I heard it at your place. I'm not sure what clothing company he's with. Maybe still the same one. It's
Under Armour, I think.
Under Armour. So there was $1 million party when he signed, and his mother, her intentions were to keep her job, but she said when she found out that they were having $1 million party to celebrate her son joining the company, she said, "I think I better resign and hang around with my teenage son a little bit longer." With
party out in Vegas.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a party out in Vegas. Yeah.
Coming back to Arthur Cohen, the late Arthur Cohen, we would have visitors, coaches come in and hang out, and they're volunteering. So when we first, listeners, when we first went down to Boca, I was fortunate to have Dave show up maybe like the second week I was there. I think I was there first, and then when I came back with you. Because we drove down there. So Arthur Cohen meets with me, and he said, you get people to hang out with you, and they hang out with you for free. He goes, I want you to let the front desk people go. You remember that? And next thing you know, it's like we're running the front desk, and the people weren't being paid. And it's like, whoa. Yeah. I do think that the front desk is the heartbeat of a tennis center. I think many, many times on the administration side, people that are on the high end can be overpaid, and people that are at the front desk, I think they're underpaid. I think often too that coaches come and go, and they just give their lessons, and they're generally making a lot more money. Of course, the way where I come from, I don't think that the entry level coach is that highly skilled. I think they're overpaid, and they don't pay their dues. It's so easy for them. And then they can always say, well, I'll just become a car trunk pro. And then the discount hunters, Welly Van Horn used to say to parents, this is way back when the lesson was $20. He would say, remember a $5 lesson is much more expensive than a $20 lesson, because you're taking a lesson from someone who's just totally guessing on what they're doing. And then, the parent will many times look for the glorified sparring partner who can hit the ball a little bit. But I remember being with Tennis Corporation of America and said, hey, we need to train the salespeople that were selling membership. Just like I would say that your staff, which is quite large, say pull a number out of the sky, 25, that the 25 people should be, I like people to work as a floater. They should experience working behind the front desk and know everything that goes into it. So you're not just, a one key for one keyhole. You're, you can multitask, but I do think that everybody, you use the word culture, the common denominators. I mean, I think people really need to know tennis, know what it takes. If why do you need to have to go to the technical courts? Why do you have to do static balance? All those things with training everyone. Because when you have meetings, for the most part, you're just meeting with your staff. You're not meeting with the entire staff, correct?
Correct. Yeah, but we have a pretty good connection. The manager will periodically come down and communicate things, within our tennis operation. He'll bring the membership people. The membership people have done a great job. There's 3 full-time people that are selling memberships nonstop, and they've done a great job of really getting to understand the instructional program for sure, not the nuts and bolts of it, but the history of it and some of those things. So, I got to hand it to them. They do a really good job of it.
I've certainly been in one lane for a long time with teaching and coaching players, coaches, parents. But way back when we had a program where you get a college degree, we had the programming course, pro shop management, camp and club management, with at a large tennis club like the one you're working at. So you get 25 pros, you get 25 baskets of balls. I remember having each basket organized where the flyers for all the programs or some upcoming functions would be within that holder on every ball basket. And then each pro had to have a clipboard. You get stopped by a police officer for rolling through the stop sign in a residential area, and you get a ticket, and you see the type of clipboard. As when I started with you had to just have the basic clipboard, but we got advanced to the point where you had to have the clipboard like a police officer. And, when you open that up, it's not only having grip stickers and goal sheets and skill sheets, even name tags, but you have flyers. So that you're right there talking to the parents, and you say, well, this is, I work with this group, and this is who you need to see with this group, like early childhood development or tournament prep, whatever you call it, and you flip-flop it. But that word culture, it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it's a process, and it's a slow process typically. And I feel like in order to achieve the culture you want to achieve, you probably have to over-exaggerate what it is you're trying to do in order to land where you want to land. I think if you want to create on the court a very disciplined structure, you have to go way over the top, especially in today's time. And the same thing is true at any club. I think whatever culture it is that you are trying to create, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to go over the top with it. I would say that each club, especially again, the size of this club is a little bit unique, but I think there's little subcultures within our culture, and even within the staff, and some are just a little bit different, maybe not better, but just different than the others. But overall, they're in the same umbrella for sure. Excuse me.
When
Texas allergies.
with It's that time of year out there, isn't it? Everything's
everything's covered in pollen. I mean, if your car's outside, it's green. It's really rough.
No, I've sent some people out to your place, and they had to leave because of the pollen.
It's a rough time of year.
One of the parents or one of the children, they said, this is fantastic for tennis, but we can't stick it because of the pollen. But I know, I think Chad Burial, he somebody remember, he had it really tough with pollen. You use a phrase, a theme for tennis, Back to the Future. I've mentioned that 100 times on these podcasts. Back in the 70s, when I went out to California to hang around Vic Braden, I remember I was driving down Pacific Coast Highway, and a little MG goes by, and it's Kim Wittenberg honking his horn. And that's how we connected. That was long before cell phones. And I had taught with Kim back in the East Coast All-American Sports. And that was back in the day where on Mondays, this is the outfit you wore. On Tuesday, this is the outfit you wore. But Kim was the assistant pro at the John Wayne Tennis Club. They had a rating 1 through 10. And, Kim and I could hit the ball a little bit. We were very low 9s because the 10s were, I could just rattle off Bob Lutz, Stan Smith, Rod Laver, Vijay Armitage, Ilya Nastasi, Tracy Austin, Billie Jean King. They were all members. It was just amazing. But behind the desk, I think there was 16 hard courts, and there were 16 televisions, and you could see each court, who was playing on the court. And the person behind the desk, a lot of times people, they want to play a better player and win. Who wants to play with a lower player? But what they did is they guaranteed that they would find you a match every day. But I think the person behind the front desk, ideally, they should be tied in where there's a bonus to their pay for being part of making the tennis instructional program go.
100%. I think that's a person, in my perfect world, it would be a person who gets a percentage of the overall gross lesson revenue. And they are, from the moment they get there each day, when they have free time, they're basically calling people to try to fill drills, create new drills for pros, et cetera, et cetera. But they're, they have some skin in the game. And, it's whether we do that or not, I think affects the overall vibe. Because they are in contact with everybody. And I always believed that, to be honest, that was part of Billy Freer's initial business plan that I remember going through with him almost 31 years ago now. And never really came into fruition. I think the person we have now does it, but it's not maybe incentivized in a way that, it really pays off for her to go way out of her way to do it. But she just does it more for the goodness of the club. But I agree 100%.
Well, the hats that a tennis coach needs to wear, there's many. I think of an administrator, say a tennis director. You'll have to tell me, think about it for a second. What comes to your mind? You think of John Verdi. John Verdi, I think he was from Sweetwater, Texas, with the Texas accent he had. He ran the company called Stroke Master. Help me out. And he made ball machines. But he used to say that a head pro or an assistant pro is a head pro in the making. So that you should treat all your assistants like they want to be head pros. Chad Berryhill spent 5 years with me, and this young guy that I know that we helped you with Billy Freer. He brought some players in from Baylor, and they were sent to be trained by us for a couple weeks. So this young guy, this is way after Craig Diley, he told me his goal, and Berryhill was in the room, because I want to be able to go back home and be the director of player development for my country. So then I leave the room, and Berryhill says, "You should have never told him that." And the guy said, "Why?" He goes, "Because now that's the way he's going to treat you." But I used to, my training with John Verdi, I remember adding to it where I said, you got an assistant pro haircut. And with, how was it? What's it called? Where it's business up front, party in the back. What's that called?
Mullet?
Yeah.
A mullet.
The mullet.
Yeah.
So the mullets. And I said, I don't care if you have an earring, but, maybe somebody who interviews you cares if you have an earring or not. And I said, you can take the earring out, but, I used to just know some young kid had a hole in their earring. And, like John McEnroe back in the day, he's endorsing Bic razors and he's not shaving. How ironic is that? It's like, well, if you're John McEnroe, they're going to give you lots of money for saying this is a great razor and he doesn't even shave. John Verdi used to say that, you can't, your staff, you can't, now it's fashionable for people not to, to have some facial hair, but back in the day, don't come back like you're looking, like you just came back from a 3-day fishing trip. But when I think of John Verdi, just greeting people, that's gone away. And Texas is, way ahead of, I'm from the Northeast, so I can say this, is that, yes, sir, no, sir. Dadgummit, the Northeasterners, they switch the letters around, they're going to say, God damn it. But, and I don't really think they're swearing. I just think they're having a conversation with the Lord, like, we don't want it to rain right now. But, if any juniors are listening to this, sometimes in Texas, if you say damn, you can get coded by an umpire. I don't really think of that as swearing, but, it's like my son Connor was playing hockey in Toronto and he's 5-6 years old and he asked me, he came out, what's it mean when the coach says that we're effing pathetic? But just the term, the greeter, just to be able to know everybody by the name. I mean, it's music to their ears. And, I think that you do an excellent job with that, where people that you're not really even, they're not part of what you do every day, but you're going to be able to greet everybody by name.
Well, I'll say hi to them, even if I don't know them. I mean, it kind of just how I grew up. I grew up where there's only about 45 people in my whole state, so I get excited when I see new people. But, back to the facial hair part of it and that, and I have a little, that's the only place it grows. But the funny thing is, I feel like the golf industry is just so much cleaner than the tennis pro industry and the culture around the golf. They do have, they're like a private school. I mean, they do have matching clothes they have to wear each day, and they are tucked in well, and they are not having the 3-day scraggly growth. And I just feel like the golf industry is a little more dialed in. And again, you go back to the PGA school that it takes for these guys to become a part of the golf industry. It's just way, way different than the USPTA or USPTR. Just, you don't even need those to enter our business. And I think they come into the business and treat the business much, much, much more professionally than the typical tennis culture.
Let's get back to hair. Can you grow hair out of your nose and out of your ears?
Plenty. Yeah, plenty in those areas.
Mark Hamill was here on visiting, and he was on a podcast. And, we were tennis bums, grinding it out, hitting balls every day. And I remember him saying, Smith, you should start braiding hair from just coming out of your nose.
Yeah, that's what you have, Yvonne, to look forward to.
Oh, no. Not looking forward to that.
David could look, and he could. He's a specialist on whether you're going to go bald now. But ironically, I went bald before he did, and he was the guy who gave me the hardest time. I did tell Yvonne, he said, you should look Anderson up online. He's a good-looking blonde-haired guy. But Peter Jacobson, great golfer, he one time said, like to have John McEnroe, Peter Jacobson, like to have John McEnroe be a member of the PGA so we could kick him out on the first day. I'm sure in your years at Brookhaven, obviously you're a specialist and expert in the tennis area, but to be in a golf meeting and they start talking about, what it takes to keep a golf course up. It's like,
way outside of my lane, but it's amazing. I know it's a tough profession. I'm looking out right now at a newly sodded number 3 golf hole, and the money and the time and then the expertise, especially in a place like Texas where the heat is just, the weather is so extreme on every end. And these guys have their work cut out for them. And I know literally nothing about that.
In Tampa at one time, I think there was 7 different facilities that had pros that I had trained, and one of them, Thomas Olerstedt from Sweden, who he was there when you were there, right? So Olerstedt.
Yeah.
So
I'm 0-2 with them.
0-2 with
Yeah.
The one of the facility he was director of. They had in Tampa the Yankees, because their spring baseball team practices there. The Bucks, the football team, and the hockey, the Lightning. They said, "Oh, great promotional tools. We'll let everybody who play, if they're on the team, they can play golf here for free." And what they had to do is they had to bring now the whole facility's been rebuilt, but at one point they had to build a huge net, because the people that were banging golf balls, some of the football players, for example, came out, they'd never played before. And they had a major problem that golf balls were just, these guys are big and strong, and they were just banging the balls. It can really be dangerous with, but yeah, golf. I mean, I grew up in golf, and it's just a different animal. With getting your PGA card, being a club pro. But the reason I mentioned that story about the athletes from the Tampa Bay teams is I've been told that golf has lost some of the professionalism that it had in years gone by.
Yeah, maybe around here it hasn't, and I think with invited clubs overall, I think it still demands a really sharp attention to detail with the people. And I think the golf pros do exactly what you said about learning the ins and outs of the business. I mean, they may have a golf shop manager as well as the director of golf, but the staff pros, the teaching pros, they're hanging out around the desk, taking people's credit cards, buying merchandise, whatever it is. They're doing it all. So they get much more well-rounded than a typical person coming into tennis. There's no doubt about it.
No, I remember so many times, talking to members of your staff, and one of the first things they would say, "Well, nobody can work like Dave." I go, "Yeah, sure you can." I said, "I can work like he does," but to actually go beyond the call of duty, and at a place like yours, it's multifaceted. I know when I was young, traveling around, I went from place to place to just watch tennis teaching, and I just wasn't sharp enough to think, okay, I want to look at the pro shop design. I want to look at all the programming. I was just so focused on how do people teach, but that was very much part of our program. It was 50% tennis, 50% business related classes, or classes related to the profession. But I think just being a greeter, that's administrator, manager, organization. I don't think it's just attendance. Why don't we comment on that for a little bit? I guess we get to number 2. We'll go a little faster. What comes to your mind when you think of attendance with organization, with the do's and don'ts of administrator?
Well, can you define, what do you mean by attendance?
I think one problem.
Attendance, or
I think one problem is that a lot of times administrators are just bean counters, like how much money is coming in, and they're just counting heads. And I think doom and gloom. There's always a positive, there's always a negative, but I think that's where when you say developing a culture, that it's not a matter of just the overhead. What's revenue, expenses, income, bottom line. Go ahead.
I think your background with having worked for TCA, and then I think a huge operation like Invited, any of the corporate type things, maybe Lifetime is similar. I think often they bury the person that is in the director role in paperwork that takes them away from being out among the people. And, to me, people want to see the director. They want him to be active. They want him to be on the floor and occasionally on the court. And, it seems like the bigger organizations, that have that, like the 3 I mentioned, I feel like they sometimes inundate the person in charge with duties that keep them away from, being a greeter, being a person among the people. And I think the smaller clubs, it's not quite the same. I feel like they have a little bit different role that the director. He becomes kind of this jack of all trades, still teaches a little, still changes the water jug, does the reporting of the books, etc. But I don't feel it's the same. I think that they do find themselves often in these bigger jobs where they're, almost an accountant sitting behind a desk counting, whether they want to or not. I think sometimes it's dictated by the corporate level.
Yeah, Tennis Corporation of America, Club Corp, Lifetime. We go on with different organizations. PBI, DVM, Dennis Vandermeer. With one thing that you do that I think really comes from Dennis Vandermeer and from your background, with Tennis Tech and how I was doing things, is that you manage from the court. Why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I believe you can. I pretty much have the same location that I set up in early every morning, and it's kind of like the central point for the operation. Short distance from me, 20 yards away, is Coach Andreas, who's very much an equal part of the operation in terms of helping it unfold each day, and it's just kind of the way it's evolved, and it's gotten pretty efficient. I wouldn't say it always has been, but the pros coming right into that area, and assignments are dished out here or there. Now we have communication tools on apps where the night before everything is sent out, so it's much cleaner, and we each have all these channels that we can communicate with. So I think if you do your homework in advance, I think it's effective. I like to be on the court I'm kind of in the middle of everything. I feel like I can keep a pulse on the teaching, pro showing up early, pro showing up late, the quality of the instruction, offer ideas on what I think they could do better. It's also a point where, people will sometimes eat their lunch and just hang out and observe for an hour. So that's how it's worked really well for me. I never really got into this business to sit in a desk. I was telling someone the other day, I've only strung one racket in my entire life in tennis. And that was when I was forced to at Tennis Tech. And I wouldn't have, I don't think there's a human in the world that would have benefited from hitting with that racket as poorly as I strung it. But everybody's got their different motivations. I mean, mine. I'm standing up right now as we're talking, and I'm, a racket in my left hand, and I'm shadow swinging in the bathroom mirror in the office room that I'm at, and so I can't really sit still anyways. It wouldn't have worked for me any other way, but I believe it's an effective way to do it. Sammy Giamalva's dad kind of ran that big operation in Houston, the Met, the same way, even though he was under Club Corp's umbrella, and he just kind of said, "Hey, I'm going to do it this way." And he hired somebody to take care of his books that he was supposed to, and he just kind of mixed it up on the court every day. He was among the people.
With stringing, let me digress on stringing. With I think maybe I've strung 3 rackets with Ethan Matthews, who works here at Wintergreen, the Wintergreen Resort. He told me he worked in a retail shop. The other day, he strung a racket in 14 minutes, and that's pretty quick. I mean, they used to have a contest, and I think Dave Bone, who he was my administrative coordinator at one time, sharp guy, graduated from Ferris State, and he actually was the owner of RSA at one point, but the United States Racket Stringer Association. But we used to have the CPR. We had NTRP. You had to be certified for NTRP. We had the umpires. We had CompuTennis, USPTA, PTR. We had all these certifications in addition to the 2-year degree. But that was the one that you could not masquerade. You could not BS. You couldn't be an imposter.
Mm-hmm.
Either you can get the racket on them. I ask kids all the time, "You string a racket?" I go, yeah. I go, "No. Can you string a racket? Can I just give you the racket? Here's a string." And we do it differently at our place. You have to learn to string your own rackets. So they say if a wealthier kid wants to pay another kid to string, we don't let that happen in the setting we have. Is that no, you have to learn to string your own rackets. But I do think that it's a good idea to have the stringer right there next to the person who's in the front desk area. And sometimes actually the person has to do both. I'll tell you a story. I wanted to watch Paul Cohen teach tennis, and I never watched him. I listened to him at a couple conferences, but he was, very well known. In fact, he coached Venus and Serena. If you go see the movie King Richard, someone is playing Paul Cohen. So I was on the UCLA campus, and I find out where rackets are being strung, and I go, "Hey, I want to watch Paul Cohen teach tennis." And the stringer usually knows everything. If that stringer is right there where they're talking to everybody. So I get this address to this beautiful mansion in Bel Air, which is the equivalent of Beverly Hills. It's just like a scene for the movie. So I rock up in my van, and I'm just going to walk around back. And next thing I know, these 2 German shepherds start chasing me. So I never got a chance to see Paul Cohen string. I think with introverts, extroverts, I think that to create that culture, it comes easy for some person to be behind the front desk and be the greeter and say hello to everybody. But the person who's on a staff and they're not very good at that, just like I do that with players. Wasn't too long ago, I had a young girl, 15, 16 years old. And I said, every time someone comes through that door, unless you're in the middle of the practice match, I'm going to have you stop and go shake hands with that adult and say hello. And they were like so nervous to do that. But no, I think one of the reasons I didn't become a stringer, but I was the youngest of 6, so I didn't have a speaking part. I didn't get to talk until I was like 20. So, I've made up for it. But no, I think that's a interesting thing with programming. But managing from the court, like, so if you're listening and you're the director, that doesn't mean that you can't be out on the court and have the league coordinator. Okay, I'm going to have a coordinator for leagues. I'm going to have a coordinator for socials. We've talked about Willie Schutte being on our podcast. He ran a program, Coffee with Willie, and he got all these 60-year-old players playing, the crack of dawn. And he was out there, going from court to court. And, he was a natural at that. But at the same time, I remember having 25 pros on this staff that he was on. Everybody had to make a video. Everybody said, no, you're going to make a video. You're going to stand right next to the monitor. And I don't want you telling people what you think and sharing your opinions until I see you make a video. That takes all sorts of time to do that. Let's go to number 2.
Yeah. Number 2. We're on pace for a 7-hour podcast.
We're going to go faster.
No, it's good. Good talk so far. Incentivize key pro staff. As programs develop and grow, the individuals responsible should benefit from that growth.
Go ahead, Dave. We already touched upon that.
Yeah, I think we hit that pretty well in the beginning. I don't think that is necessarily how the tennis industry is set up. You helped me with that, Steve, as I transitioned here from Boca. You helped me I know initially when I sat down, I was, you had a feeling I was going to be offered X and said, no, you should make sure you get Y. And X was the initial offer. And I said, no, I want Y. And, but doesn't know, it could have easily been a handshake, and I could have been walking out the door the other way too.
Yeah, but I get 22. I get 22.2% of that. I keep waiting for the check from you guys.
It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. I actually had it all ready to give to you, and then I invested it to get you more into crypto. And the crypto market failed on me, so I got to wait and let it come back, and I'll get it to you as soon as it does. But yeah, I think every program, and I don't want to, say ours is exactly like that or isn't, but in a perfect world, if the early childhood person, has a salary, I think it'd be much better to just give them a percentage of the program. And I think people work harder then. They get ownership, much like we were talking about with the person running the pro shop. If they have a vested interest, once people get skin in the game, not everybody, but it seems like most people that get skin in the game, they tend to treat it like it's theirs. They care for it a little more.
Somebody who we should get on the podcast is Doug Cash. He knows so much about the business of tennis. He has a business called Cash Flow. Compensation, how do you compensate a pro with, do you have a budget for educating your pros? Does a percentage of their lesson revenue go into professional development? Talked about that a little bit.
We don't. We have a budget, but it's not really a designated area like that. If, for instance, I wanted to put a weekend seminar on where you and Yvonne came here, I think we could get the funding to get your trip worthwhile from your end, generate the revenue that way. But there's not a percentage that goes directly to professional development. That's kind of just done, through people like Dion, people like Andreas.
I think with Dion Krupe. Tell us Andres' last name again. Andres
Quijada.
He was a guest on our podcast with
Mm-hmm.
even say 3%. If it was 2.5%, something that went to an educational budget. I talked to a friend of mine the other day. We're going to talk to Greg Moran, who just wrote a book on recreational tennis, and he was saying that I just called him
the truth about tennis.
Truth about tennis, right? It was going to ask, Ed Weiss, who wrote the book, Welby Van Horn book, just said that you did a very good job. One thing he did was taking his pros and having a meeting, or maybe it was just one-on-one, and everything from what's the difference between whole life and term, and just helping people with a retirement plan. But I think that a lot of times it's best if that is built in, where you're forcing the pros to invest in their own career. I know with the content that we have, even like at a summer camp, people will pay $1 more per hour if they've gone through our 5 courses, and 5 courses is only 31 hours. $1 an hour doesn't sound like much of a difference, but $2 per hour, it just adds up. I would like to think that people I tease, say, just do it for the love of the game, but people do. They do need to make money, and I think that's very important on your list. That should be a responsibility of administrators.
Yeah, that's a great call. Just helping people navigate for the future. I remember you having my wife's father come in when he was working for A.L. Williams and speak to the Tennis Tech students on, the investing in term versus whole life. A.L. Williams had a certain philosophy and trying to get people to think that way. And I think people just in general, the future is here before we're ready for it. That's for sure.
Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey doesn't want you to borrow money. I went to the Shark Tank, and at one point I went as someone's guest, so I went to the Shark Tank, and the course Tennis Intelligence Applied. Initially, we charged $250. No marketing. It was just on the shelf, and my phone would make a little noise, and I just made $250. So after 2 years, we just put it up for free. And I remember the guy at the Shark Tank, I told him that. He said, "That's absolutely the dumbest thing I've ever heard of." But no, financial management. So it goes both ways, not just, how's it go? You only make as much money as you save. And Ronald Reagan, remember he said that going back to the Mormon church, the tithing, that if everybody just were to pay 10%, and if people were to save 10%, but I do think that should be a responsibility for the person in charge, is try to navigate those waters for the pros, so they're becoming better. I know you've had a lot of people that there's such a great vibe at Brookhaven that they've stayed for a long, long time, which there's positives to that, but it makes it challenging. I think really for people to go on and make more money, you have the coordinate, and you have the subordinate, and it's really healthy to have someone work for someone like yourself, and I think many people haven't worked long enough for you. They worked less than 2 years and they're on and off and doing their own thing. And I don't think that's paying your dues. But if someone was there for a really healthy amount of time, then as you go up the ladder financially, you have more responsibility. More responsibility generally means you're paid more. Let's go to number 3.
Yeah.
Get this down to a 6-hour podcast.
Yeah. Speeding up. Number 3, weekly team meetings should be held on both the club logistics and also the continuation of education for the pro staff.
Well, I think, so many problems that I think I've encountered in my life, just communication. And I think it's critical that everybody sits in a room, knows all the happenings. COVID put a little bit of a weird thing on it from not only the pro training end for us, but also the gatherings. We need to get back to all of that. You fall out of habits, and then you form new habits, whether good or bad. And I think that an operation, no matter how big, how small, I think that 30-minute meetings. I don't believe they need to be the hour meetings in terms of logistics that people have. I think we got to respect time, and I like Elon Musk's philosophy a little bit in that if his word is that if you are ever involved in a corporate meeting and at any point you feel it's not relevant to you or it's not going to help you in any way, you have the complete freedom to get up and walk out. And I think that a lot of meetings you find yourself in there going, God, I got a million things to do, and this really isn't going to hit anywhere for me. But I think the pro training meetings, getting the information, the common denominators, teaching group dynamics, handling scenarios that have unfolded during the week that everybody can learn from, how maybe somebody handled it versus how it could have been handled. I think those are critical. And too often, I think if there are meetings, they're just a group in a room, and it's, hey, we're down, we're a negative 22 on membership this year. Revenue's down 10%, and it's not really a positive meeting in terms of growth. And seldom is there really any solutions offered, or even feedback given from the people that potentially can solve the problem. So,
Tennis Corporation of America, 25 pros. I was supposed to meet with each pro 30 minutes per week. And it's like, but it wasn't really set up. The idea was the director wasn't on the tennis court, but I certainly didn't do it that way. But I met with the pros. I can remember telling pros, meet me here. And, I'd be at a hockey rink when my kids were really young. I'd be renting skates and buying hot dogs for the pros. And one guy would show up, and just 30 minutes would go by, and another guy would show up. I said, yeah, okay, I'm going to rent you some skates. And just, talk to him about what's going on. Administration with Tennis Corporation America, they allowed me to do a couple different things. One was to design an office. And back in the day, no cell phones, but each pro had their own locker that was up. It was not like a locker room locker. It was just a cabinet, basically, but they called it a locker. But they had to have a Rolodex, and they had to have a telephone binder, and it was just steel baby steel. Coming back to John Verdi's definition of research, steel baby steel, is Dennis Vander used to make his pros they had to make 5 phone calls a day, and now people a lot of times they just send a text. With Elon Musk, I wrote down Steve Jobs. This is something that's been stated before on this podcast. Mark Fuchs is, it's like you have so many close friends where you spend a lot of time with your kids. And Mark and Becky Fuchs, Mark, he's very humble about it. He spent sometimes just a little time with Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, here's a great line. He never suffered a fool twice. Now, just think about what you've done from a coaching standpoint. Have you ever suffered a fool twice? I know I was a fool, still am in a lot of ways, but how many chances does a kid get? And the system's just not in place where, okay, I'm on the varsity. They could cut me to the JV. They could put me on the intramural. They put me on the freshman the reserve squad. Actually, they had that with this prep school I went to. It was the reserve squad. And they had, it was the rejects. It was people who couldn't get to practice on time and they couldn't run a lap, but they still had them playing whatever sport it was. And
I think one story that comes to my mind about the staff meeting. It was an experience, Steve, you and I shared with Kerry Leeds, who kind of became the manager of Seguso Bassett. I can't remember his official title.
COO.
Project manager. COO.
Chief office operator. Chief operating officer. Chief
operating officer. Yeah. I didn't know that was his title, but I remember there was such a disconnect because in order for us to do our job, it conflicted with his number one philosophy, basically, which was the customer is always right. I remember sitting there and hearing him say that. And, you have to make it work somehow. And in order for us to do our job in terms of player development, the customer is seldom right. And it just, I think that mentality still carries over today. You have to, there's so, like we said, there's so many different components to it. And in fact, I gave some advice to a pro recently. I said, hey, you're not talking to your audience. You got to remember the 3 E's, that exercise, education, enjoyment. I said, you're hitting them with what I call the Ken dance lesson that I'll never forget that I gave in Tyler. And where I thought I taught a great tennis lesson because I had this guy basically go through an hour and he looked pretty good on a particular stroke, but he hit about 2 balls and he was there to burn calories. And that was, I've said this before, you had come up and you said, here, get all these baskets of balls out after everybody left and feed them to a target and just don't say a word. Pick them up and then put them back in.
I didn't do that. No, I'm just kidding.
I think you did. But it was, but here's the thing, it stuck with me. And so I watched one of those lessons just take place and I was like, you missed the 3 E's. It should have been heavy on exercise, heavy on enjoyment, and give a tip here or there on the strokes. Not even slow them down really. Get the palm to the target, and that was it. So in that case, yeah, Kerry leads. It's a pretty easy thing to win. But in case of player development, the customer isn't always right, and management has to be behind you on that, or it'll never work. And my dad, when he told me, when I said my number one goal was to break the country club mentality in Dallas 31 years ago, and he said, update your resume. And I said, better to know now than later. And, hopefully it'll not come up and bite me at some point, but you never know.
I think in sport, I've did this project with Tennis Memphis. So I met with the executive director and his assistant. And I said, hey, if this is going to work, this is how it's going to work. Is I'm going to be the head coach and you guys are the athletic director. And you know how that works in college football. So just one thing with Coach Ilya has been on our podcast many times. He said to a kid, he goes, he said, you need to go change your diaper. The kid's like 12 years old. And the father, the mother, they both were very, very upset. And then the person in charge, the executive director, he told the parents, he goes, well, he's a young coach. I'll talk to him. So then I hear the story and I look at the executive director. I go, you totally blew it. I said, you need to call them up and tell them, because I said, I'm going to tell them that you're wrong and the coach is right. What do you mean? Your kid can't be told he's got to, go change his diaper because he's acting immature. But no, it has to be, all connected. I like what you said about it's true in player development. The customer generally is always wrong, and the tennis parent, they're blindly writing checks for the most part. They haven't been down the road. They're going down the road the first time. And I can remember, I know we've said we're going to have a podcast just on our experience at a high-profile academy in Boca. Now it's Chris Everts. I remember talking to your former boss, Dick Tucker. And, I remember I had a number of conversations with him. He was interested, but it never became a reality. But Kerry Leeds, so many different things, but I've been to the Kerry Lee Tennis Center many times in the Bronx. Beautiful place. He was a very good tennis player, played at Yale. He's loved by so many people. His father, I was told by Christina Dell, is still alive. Very, very successful conglomerate. I think he owned Levi Jeans. And what happened with Kerry is unfortunately, he died of an overdose. So but I was the director. And if you remember, I was telling Robbie Seguzo that I didn't need to be doing what I was doing. I got a big kick out of like talking to Ken X and negotiated a $25,000 deal for Robbie Seguzo. But at that time, he didn't think that was very much money. But for a company to give cash, not just product. But I certainly needed to get back to the court, so I knew the operation needed a GM. And but all of a sudden, Kerry showed up, and they were hoping that his father would invest in the company and such. But you would remember this. His father called me up, and he asked me if he could call me once a week, and I talked to him once a week for like 6 weeks. And he said, "You're the only guy down there I trust," because the son had obviously confided in the father. He goes, "This guy, the tennis directors give me a hard time every day," and it's like. The hockey player, John Tortorella, if I'm pronouncing it right, is now with the Flyers. He's been a coach. Is Jay Feaster, the GM, and LeCavier is a fantastic hockey player. So he wants to be traded. So he goes to the GM and he says, "I want to be traded." He goes, "The coach just gives me shit all day," and the general manager goes. He goes, "I'm his boss, and that's all he does. He just gives me shit all day." And but I think that has to happen where. It's like, don't get your feelings hurt. This is a sport, with, granted that we have to differentiate. It's, recreational tennis to me is competitive tennis, just at a slower pace. You just got to package it differently. A forehand's a forehand. Are we on 3 or 4, Coach?
Yeah, we're on 4.
Bobby Orr, number 4. Go ahead, Anderson. Or no, go ahead, Yvonne.
Yeah, I'll be doing the talking here. A constant effort should be made to assist the teaching staff in navigating their day with greater ease and efficiency.
Yeah, it's often a disconnect, I think. I think everybody has a lot of stress in their lives, but if you're doing a good job on the court and you're pumping out 40 plus hours a week, there's a lot of variables that come your way. And I think part of the job I kind of see it a little bit as my role. And I think it certainly could be a role that somebody in a director of tennis or director of racket sports job could do. But I try to head off problems that I can solve that might be headed towards one of my people, and to help them navigate their day a little more effectively. And Dave Severson, who I have a ton of respect for, and actually wrote a book on the business of tennis called Net Profits. Used to be a huge part of the USPTA. But he said that he felt the person that was kind of running our club over the years, he said, Friday should be fruit plate day. And that person should be walking around to the courts, basically, dishing out bowls of fruit or, a Subway sandwich or what have you for the pros. Not having it just, occasionally, but it should just be a gesture saying, hey, you're appreciated. I know it's tough. I know you're grinding and I'm sitting in air conditioning and here's my way of saying thank you. And I think that those kind of things don't happen. It has been really fun for us to be under the invited umbrella here since October. We were independent contractors because a few of those things do happen. There's a lot of little things like that I've noticed that they do for their staff or their employees. And it certainly has made us feel a little bit more appreciated, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think it's important. I think that everybody should be, instead of just critiquing the people that I hate to use the word subordinate, but the people that are helping them stand up, basically, they need to be doing a better job of looking how they can help those people make their day a little bit better.
With the comment you made, I like to tell tennis teaching professionals, just remember added value. Just always try to add value, always try to exceed expectations. You mentioned the word stress. I like to tell people, I don't believe in parental pressure, peer pressure. It's just really self-inflicted pressure. I would say this, that the tennis teaching professional, if they don't do it in the morning, get up really early, or they don't do it in the evening, they have to sit down and go, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow? They just have to be organized. PIP, get your poop in a pile. Let's go to number 5. Boom, boom, Jeffrey on.
Number 5, input from staff should always be sought and acted on. There's often a disconnect at ground level. Problems are inevitable when this occurs.
Well, I'll take my group of pros that kind of make up our staff here. There are some really, really sharp people, diverse backgrounds from multiple continents. Many of them with graduate degrees and really diverse experiences, like Coach Andreas, who was a part of the Goldman Sachs operation. Sharp guy, but I think that it often comes to where there's just no input gathered from people at the ground level. It seems like there's only feedback given, critical feedback given, and again, I might get in a little beef for saying this, but at the remodeling of this and the incredible renovation that we went through in this facility, there were certainly things that I wanted to see done that I think need to be done here. A bona fide classroom setting for our homeschool people, a rebuilding of a backboard, a wall outside, that, and I could go on and on and on, but there was just absolutely no communication. No thought from my end, even after 30 years of being here. It was all done above my head, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm going to wake up and do it whether I'm teaching in my driveway or not. But I think that the things that I could have added would have helped the club be a little bit better. But it's often the way the world works. The golden rule. He who has the gold rules. And sometimes that's just the nature of the beast.
I like the expression, if you let it slide, you're going to have an avalanche. I mean, if it's a little problem, it's going to turn into a big problem. You got to take care of it right away. And you got to be confrontational. You can have different styles, but you have to, you got to put the fires out right away. This is a compliment to you, Mark Voss, who was a student when you were a student and did a number of things with Mark over the years. I know his son came to visit not too long ago. And John Peterson's a great guy. He was teaching a class. He was at Tyler Junior College for 17 years. I mean, a player's coach, loved, successful. and he was having a first year student grade second year student papers. And I remember telling Mark Voss, hey, go tell him he can't do that. Tell him he's got to grade his own papers. And I certainly wouldn't have had a problem telling him, but we were on the fly and had so many things going on, and Mark just froze, and he just said, I can't do that. I said, Anderson, go tell him. And then you had to go tell him. It's not easy to say, hey, this is a problem. We can't do it this way. But BBB versus TTT, big brass ball versus tiny tin tails. I mean, if it's a problem, it's a problem. Let's go with number 6.
Number 6, pros teaching junior groups and/or academies are often not recognized for their selfless efforts. Typically, rates are lower than a group of adults. Pros often become discouraged and disinterested.
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast. Not necessarily just here, but everywhere that, when a pro comes into a facility, again, I know this is about the admin, the director roles, the owners, the operators, but it's a real hole in the system, in that a person coming in to teach a junior class, and they may have 8 ankle biters out there, and they may be just one court, but they're typically assigned a set rate. Just throwing a number out, 24 an hour, we'll say. And then you have, and it's not a process that's often respected internally by owners operators. It's almost like someday you'll graduate to teaching adults, and then after that you'll graduate into sitting behind the desk. And it's really just a very, very poor representation of the tennis career, I think. And so, you have a charismatic adult teacher who is out there right beside that going on, and they have 6 adults, and each adult's charged $30 an hour, and that pro's getting 75% of $180 for the same amount of time. And for some reason, I've always kind of fought for the underdog. It's kind of in my nature, and the junior hours just don't seem to have the same bite in terms of, you're servicing 6 adult clientele. It's viewed at a little bit higher level than you're teaching 8 ankle biters how to love the sport of tennis. And I think it's a real hole. And it's got to change, I think, but it's pretty commonplace.
Actually, ankle biters, you want to put that in your notes? Anybody listening to our podcast, take notes. Ankle biters can also be called nose pickers. With going back to John Verdi, pickers, I used to love to work with John Verdi. He used to say, if you want to, referring to the tennis ball, if you want it to go over there, aim it over there. And he would divide his ball machine clinics into hitters, pickers, and feeders. That's organization. That's being an administrator. I think too many times the administrator, they just think of it as a paper shuffle, but everything requires organization. Talking to a gentleman who owns a tennis club, and we're going to go spend some time at his tennis club, and one of his directors, we were scheduled to go for 4 days, and he sent me an email back, and he goes, I think we should just do it for 3. I think this is too long. And I said, yeah, okay, that's fine. But I'm thinking, no, we need to do this for 4 years. I mean, to have a tennis staff improve, it takes a long time to have someone's skill level go way up. This gentleman who owns a tennis club, he did say that, he thinks his pro staff, and he's very frank, that, and I think this is just an industry norm, is the tennis coach can just cruise during a kid's lesson. They're out there with some, 10-year-olds, they can just cruise and feed balls. But if they're working with professional people, they're working with adults, that's another factor too, is that all has to be monitored, is that, how people, present themselves, how they conduct themselves from one group to the next. Here's a question that, do you find that, as leading a large group of coaches, So say a coach is running a group of 6, and within that group of 6, one of the students they actually give private lessons to. Do you feel like you had to monitor that over time where the coach ends up giving the person who takes private lessons from them more attention? And I don't think they're always doing that because of money. And I certainly don't want a junior coach to refer to a student as a client. I've got some people mad at me. I said, don't call your student a client. They're 12 years old. Just please don't do that. But why don't you comment on that?
I think the really good coaches go just the opposite way. I think they actually put that person, say, hey, they might put him in leadership roles because they should be a little further along if they're getting more individual help, perhaps. And I think they put him in leadership roles, and I think they may have him demo a little bit out in front. But I see it happen. I mean, it doesn't really happen much around here. I got to be honest. I think of like Coach Andreas with his relationship with his nephew, and that kid, he gets worse treatment than everybody else. And but the irony is, by getting worse treatment, he's getting the best treatment. And but if it's kind of the Tony Nadal and Rafa thing. And if we had a stroke contest, for instance, and even though Andreas works with his nephew, there's absolutely zero chance if we had a form contest that he would pick his nephew. He would be last. He doesn't even need to compete. If there's 10, he's number 10. That's where he's going to be voted. And as you mentioned the name tonight, that I've had people on staff that have had kids here and that have picked their own kids as the winners of the form contest. So I think it comes down to the character of the coach, and I just think that you certainly have to be careful about it for sure. But I don't like that at all. I hope it's not happening here. And now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to be on the lookout for it.
I think sometimes what happens is it's not based on favoritism. It's based on, they're just more zeroed in on their game because they're just well aware what their flaws are. And then there's also that stress level. Hey, I've told you a million times to close the racket face on the backhand side. I think when you, to make it tough, the Marines, when they run a workout, sometimes it has to deal with the number of showers. I know that I'm working a group of people out and you're rotating the showers, and there's only like say 6 showers. You don't send 20 people and all take a shower at the same time. So you run a workout, and back in the day, it's just gone away from so many good things. But tennis practice, we used to have people run in place and just if we say hit it, they would like the players would just go flat belly on the ground like they do in football practice. I do think we want to get back to administration, but I think a lot of times coaches we have so many male coaches is that they're not as tough on women as they should be. They're not as tough on girls. And like say a coaching session, they'll be tougher. I think some coaches are tougher on their own kids first. Number 2 is they're tougher on boys. And then the girls, sometimes the girls get to skate by because, that's just the way it is that it's a little more difficult to turn up the volume when you're talking to a young girl. Let's go. What's the next number?
Next number is number 7.
Oh, we're getting down the list. Good.
Mandate certification and fund it.
Should be a given. Whether you do it through the USPTA, USPTR. Like I said, to me, a direction I'd love to see the GreatBase go is just have a bona fide certification and let myself and other people write their annual $400 and some check to the GreatBase, and the thousands of coaches that have benefited directly and indirectly from the information. It's not only money better spent, but it's money that can really help the cause continue to grow and carry it into the future. But that certification should be funded by the club. Some of these, you go back and when I was making a whopping $750 a month working for you, and trying to provide for my,
you're overpaid.
Huh? I know. And I remember my wife was making right around the same amount of money as an administrative person at Holiday Inn. And, it's tough to live sometimes. And, some of these people find reasons not to join and get certified. But I do think that it's a small price to pay for a club to, if you're gonna advertise, hey, all our coaches are USPTA certified, to pitch in and make it happen. Billy did it at the end of his career. I think he had a couple of years that right near the end that he actually offered to pay the annual dues. Should have been done right away, no doubt about it. And I would encourage all owners, operators, directors to really fight for their staff to get that done.
When you say $750, I believe that was $750 a semester, and
it might have been. It felt like $750 a semester.
No, you actually in Tyler, Texas. I really pushed this where there was at first 2, 3, then 4 clubs. Is that right? Maybe there was 3 when I started. There was there was 3 tennis clubs when I started, 4 when I left. And we didn't want the students out hustling lessons on public courts. And I think for the most part, very, very few people did that. One is that we were at the public parks. There was a contest years ago called Tennis Town USA, and we were in contention. We never won it, but Tennis Magazine, Tennis Town USA, but we were helping with the high school teams. We were teaching at all the parks. I mean, I was trying to create lab experiences for, at one point, over 100 students. But with that, shortly afterwards, you, like so many other people, at a junior college, many times the person who becomes a pharmacist, they're really well paid, rightfully so. But many of the tennis teachers that we trained, they jumped up the ladder. It was amazing how some of the monies that our young students would be paid, because they'd go places and they would get a hefty percentage of the lessons. But a lot of times you would have been better off to pay your dues. But yeah, I think it was $750 a semester. But and we worked around the clock. But the thing is that people knew that there was a very good job for them in this, as if they were to hang in there, get the degree. I think with certification is not education. One time in Atlanta, I was there training coaches for a company. A company was teaching the Alta Leagues, and it was someone well, David Weiss. David Weiss was in Atlanta, and he had very good group dynamic skills. So the gentleman ran this company where he had nomadic pros, because in Atlanta it's just sprawling suburbia. There's just all these beautiful unattended neighborhood facilities. I say unattended. There's not, like say in Florida, because years ago most of the facilities had clay. There had to be a pro there to maintain the clay and just monitor the clay. So anyway, I go in and I in Atlanta training tennis teachers, and then a tornado touches down, and the Tennis Club of the South was hit. And there was just, the weather was, it was still raining. And so there was no tennis being taught. So all these tennis people ended up at the Tennis Club of the South. And I showed up just to help up. You're picking up leaves and branches and just helping out, helping hands. And Dennis Vandermeer was there. I hadn't seen Dennis in some time. And, we, had lunch and just kept helping out with picking up debris. But he said to me, Steven, you were right. It's education. It's not certification. But I think with certification, it needs to be ongoing. Like say, and I appreciate what you've said about the GreatBase. I mean, hours in the game, like pilots, how many hours, a weekend, just doesn't get it, just to go someplace for 3 days. But the certification, it needs to be continuing education. And when you say fund it, you mean the club pays for it, program pays for it.
Yeah. the initial test and then the ongoing dues that happen annually. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What do you got?
Next, number 8, continue your teaching career through your lifetime. Nothing builds respect and team morale more than seeing leaders in the trenches.
David, let me interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
Trivia question for Yvonne. Why does Roger Federer like the number 8?
Isn't that his birth date?
Yeah, so let's see. He was born in 81. He was born, I think, August 8th, 81. So he likes the number 8. That's the name of his company. And you got to like Roger Federer. So number 8, again, continue your teaching career through your lifetime. Nothing builds respect and team morale more than seeing leaders in the trenches. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in Vietnam, more, commanding officers were killed by bullets from their own platoons than the opposition. And you want to have a staff that wants to, go into battle with you. You have to suit up and go into battle with them. And I know that it's not feasible for many people to, pump out even 20, 30 hours based on administrative responsibilities. But I do think it's possible for everybody to be on the court an hour a day. And that hour a day should be a diverse range of skill levels and types of teaching. It should go from, not only typically cherry picking maybe top juniors or, high maintenance adult members, but it should be mixed in. It should be from A to Z in regard to the type of menu that your club offers in regard to teaching. And I think if the person is visible, hitting that week in and week out, you're looking at 5 to 7 hours. Not only does it do a lot for the morale, but I think that it solves another problem. I wrote this to somebody, and it's kind of like I was saying a few weeks ago. It was just like knocking at the door. It didn't really go anywhere. But it's hard and if I were to try to generate a salary for an entry level pro, if I ran this place completely, if I were to teach 7 hours a week, and usually the directors of Racket Sports retain a higher percentage than the staff pros, then I could utilize that money to basically subsidize a salary for a very, a pro that really shows some potential, and get them a little more well-rounded, get them doing more than just, getting on the court and off the court. They could learn a little bit more about the operation as a whole. I think that's a great formula for many, many reasons, but I would say that it is almost a polar opposite of that as time marches on.
With, so many things with, I think teaching, I know you and I agree on this. It's so sad that so many people in tennis, even at a young age, they want to get off the court. I think that's a problem where it's with coming back to Doug Cash. How do you pay a pro? Well, if they were to work 55 hours a week and say, for example, they are 35 hours a week on the court, and then there's 20 hours of admin work. They have to just, what do you have to really organize? You got to organize yourself. You got to organize time. You got to organize money. You got to organize people. What has to be organized? Everything from programming to event management. Going back to the beginning of your question, did you refer to John Moore, Vietnam? Just the first part of your answer.
No. I was, the commanding officers. There were more COs, commanding officers.
Okay, right, yeah.
That were basically executed by their own guys, shot in the back, during friendly fire,
right,
so to speak. But I think taken down by their own platoons because, I don't think I don't think the morale was good. I think that, you got to feel like you're a part of the team. I think it's good for people in that role too, because you can feel a little bit on the outside in, and I think if there's too much distance overall, it just doesn't do anybody any good on either end.
No, actually, no, okay, I get it. John Moore. I mean, I think he was a little before you, but he went to Tennis Tech, and
no, he was there. Yeah, I remember John.
What a class act! He spent years his career was the Army, and when I grew up, my father, he was in World War II. All the friends of my father's, they were in World War II. They never, ever, ever talked about the war, and with John Moore, I mean, he didn't not want to talk about the experiences in Vietnam to the class, to the group. But I certainly had many conversations with him. Every day he ran on that football field, every day. So fit. He was retired, I think, from 55. He was the fittest guy in the program.
Second.
Second. With number 8, I have to come back to the pay, that $750 a semester. There was 2 young guys that I gave the opportunity, and it was really an opportunity to be on the inside. And I know you were there for 3 years with, and you were in that area. I mean, we went to Florida, but you had autonomy. But for 3 years, you were around the program every day. And then, I guess with my math, next 4 years, you were running, 2 tennis clubs in a neighboring town. But these 2 guys, they questioned, how much they were going to be paid. How's this work out per hour? And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll meet with you 2 guys tomorrow. And with my own checkbook, I wrote each of them a $750 check. This was like the very beginning of the semester. They'd only been working like a week. And they both went on and they did fine in the tennis industry. But I wrote them a check out of my own pocket for $750. And then what I did is I just went up to the administration office, and I said, I'm going to operate this semester with 2 less student assistants. So the $750 was for a lab assistant. And I just knew it wouldn't work. They said, well, how's this going to work out per hour? I said, I'll meet with you guys tomorrow. And I wrote them a check, and I said, here, you're paid. And I said, you're done. You're a student in the program, but you're not going to be a student assistant in the program. They both looked at me. They're just twiddling their thumbs. And I'm sorry. Well, can I talk to you again? No, because if you're thinking that way, if you're thinking you're stinking, you're like, no, it's just not going to work. And one of the things with that program, going back to it, I was told every 20 students I'd have a full-time faculty member. So I was there a decade throughout the 80s, and it was students teaching students. There's so much responsibility placed on the second-year students. So yourself as basically a third-year student. But I think with teaching, skill-wise, if you don't use your skills, you lose your skills. And the administrators that totally get off the court and never teach, and they're never around it, to the point where they don't even know students' names. It's a skill set to teach tennis, just like it's a skill set where you have to. I know my skill set is better on the tennis court than it is in the office, but you just have to be honest about, what are your strengths and weaknesses, and you just can't avoid one completely. Let's go with the next one.
Number 9. Annual event evaluations should be held individually with clear goals and a sliding scale for pros to consistently grow when performance meets the mark.
Yeah, I mean, it's goal setting. I think to take the time, show the care, show the interest in the well-being of your staff, to sit down with them and say, hey, and they have to be honest. This is what needs to be done. I mean, we kind of do them on the go, and then there are annual evaluations, but they just have to be honest, and they have to be productive, and they have to be 2 ways. You got to give the people a chance to speak back to you, and I'm a big believer in when people hit the mark, they should start the next year at a little bit better spot. And my son-in-law is in a very big part of the insurance business. He's an underwriter. He manages a team of underwriters for a huge company, and when his marks are hit, he's rewarded, and when they're not hit, he's not rewarded. And I think that it needs to be very similar. I mean, if somebody exceeds 2,000 hours on court in a year, they should begin the next year at 2.5 or 5% higher rate. And it tends to sit on static numbers regardless of performance. And I think that it's very, very dangerous for the motivation of people long term. I'm a big believer in the sliding scale kind of approach, just for motivation. We don't do it here. I wish we would. I think it'd be healthier, but yeah.
I'll tell you a story with VIP lessons, very important people. David Hartman, baseball player, he was on Good Morning America every day, really nice guy. And my assignment, I was not working a regular rotation at the Vic Braden Tennis College. So I was coaching David Hartman, his wife, and their 2 little kids. So a side story is that, David said to me, again, professional baseball player, he goes, I really love golf. He goes, the reason we're here is my wife loves tennis. So anyway, I go in and I tell Vic, I go, Hartman, he's a golfer. So the next thing I know is after the lessons, the wife goes off with the 2 kids. And so Vic and Gideon Early get David Hartman hitting golf balls. And they do a biomechanical screen sketch. And then at that time, Gerald Ford was the president. And they had his golf swing. And they had Jack Nicholson's golf, or Jack Nichols. Nick, help me out here. Jack, not Nicholson. Jack.
Nicholas. Yeah. Nicholas.
19 times number 2. Yeah. So, yeah, I can't believe I got that wrong, but senior moment with, so during that time though, he was there for a full week and there was this meeting. So I come into the meeting late. And, I was not with the regular routine of, okay, the classes are over, and Vic very seldom had meetings, such an easygoing guy. So he has a meeting with everyone and he goes around the room and asks, and everybody said out loud, what did they think of the job? They had to answer, was it a stepping stone or a career building job working at the Vic Braden Tennis College? So I come in and Vic loved it, but some of my coworkers didn't really love it. I had no idea. So, Steve, what do you think? Is this a stepping stone job or a career building job? And I said, a stepping stone job. I was the only person who said that. And he said, why do you say that? I said, oh, we don't work hard enough. I said, this is a cakewalk. I said, we have, during the winter months, we have 3 45-minute classes in the morning, 3 45-minute classes in the afternoon, and then we can do whatever we want. And we weren't really, all we did is teach and coach. I mean, we didn't do anything else. Vic said at one time that he goes, yeah, my pros, this is a compliment to how hard I drove you guys at Tennis Tech, because a lot of tennis techers ended up working for Vic in Europe, and in California, Utah, other places. So he goes, yeah, Steve, your coaches show up 15 minutes early with a clipboard asking what they could do. My coaches show up 1 minute before, and all they got is their sunglasses and their racket. A coach is, I think if they're just showing up and all they've got is a racket, I mean, they should be walking around with a clipboard. Jim Burdick, put your brains down. But how Vic paid people back in those days, it was like for every year you were there, you made $50 more a week, and you didn't have to do any more, and you didn't have any more responsibilities. And it was in a lot of ways it was a fun place to work, but we were so spoiled because it was such an amazing tennis facility. Time Magazine said best tennis facility in creation. That's another whole subject, but I do think with pay, I like the idea that when you give more lessons, when your volume of lesson goes up, your percentage goes up. And I think, this from having so many pros work for you is if they're just about money all the time, I mean, you just got to write that down because we're not supposed to swear on the podcast. Our listeners, you'll hear a beep. I'm a little more comfortable swearing than just that, but with, I think the administrators have to be well aware of this, is that if they themselves have to do that, if you put people first, there will be profit. But so many people are just so centered on the profit. Anyway, stepping stone job. Number 9, what do you got, Ivan, baby?
We're on 10.
We're on 10.
Wow. We're on 10, yeah.
Bottom lines don't always show the results of a productive program or pro. Reward quality and quantity will eventually emerge.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that conflicts with number 9, but I think that I look at Coach Dion teach. I wouldn't say he's on the court sunrise to sunset anymore, but he's teaching an amount that he's determined he wants to teach at this point in his life, and I feel he certainly earned the right to do that. And but to watch him teach a lesson is very motivating for me. He's doing an amazing job of giving each person, to use Rick Macy's phrase, the most important lesson is the person right in front of him now. But Dion really, he doesn't just dial it in ever on his lessons, and he's got tremendous quality. And I think that in times that I've been around him here, and there's been times that maybe he's been overlooked because he isn't the highest producing pro, for instance. So it's a very tricky thing. And but I believe number 10 ties in with number 1. There just has to be common denominators, and people need to be trained properly. We have a guy, Gino Ranieri, Steve, who actually, and Yvonne, he came with a group that I brought down to Hillsborough Community College to visit Steve. I don't know how many years ago now.
90s.
It had to be 24 years ago, maybe. And Gino was, I think, 7 years old. He was the one young student we had. Everybody else was, 10 to 14. And then we had a couple of 16. But we had about 20 kids down there. And he got out of tennis and came back into tennis. He left tennis at age 10. Came back to it at 17. He showed up at my old court 4 where I used to teach all the time. And he said, "Hey, Dave, I want to play college tennis." And I said, "I want to be in the NBA." Where have you been? And he said, he goes, "I've been playing basketball." He's a great athlete. Played, Texas 5A football and basketball. And I said, "Let me see you hit a few balls." So I had him play a 12-year-old girl, and he got beat out. It was just like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. And I said, "Gino, get your mom on the phone." And I said, "Listen, he was entering his senior year. It was September. And I said, we got to get him out of traditional school, and he's got to live on the court." He ended up going to Cohen College. He was a JUCO All-American there and finished at Texas A&M, Texarkana, and came back on the staff. And he struggled initially. He had actually went into the business world he worked for Avis or one of the rental cars. And he got it, but this guy he's like Mike Carter as far as personality. And he came onto the staff, but he still struggled initially. And I just remember trying to convince people above me, hey, hang in there. This guy's got the X factor. He just needs to learn a little bit more on how to navigate this career, and boom, boom, boom. And now he's the most productive pro there in terms of hours taught. And he specialized really in adult groups. And that's all he does every day. I mean, you can't get a lesson with the guy. It's like,
That's great.
And
how old
it's
is,
just a great story.
How old is Gino now?
30.
Approximately 30. That's a great story.
And he's just a sharp guy. But so whether it's, his numbers will reflect that. His bottom line is going to be much higher. Dion's might be a little lower because he's doing a lot of one-on-one. But the quality in both those guys in their field, their niche that they've chosen, they're both teaching great tennis, different audience each day. But I think that if you're not on the court as an administrator, or you're not around as the GM or the owners of a facility, you really can't appreciate the beauty of two different people like that doing two totally different jobs inside of the tennis teaching staff. I mean, their roles are totally diverse, but yet they're just both doing a brilliant job of it. And I think you got to be hands-on. Or you got to hire somebody that you're going to trust to be hands-on, and then you let them go. But you can't come in and snapshot judgment it.
Yeah, it was so well put. With when you hear the name Mike Carter, you brought his name up many times. Carter was with me for 5 years. I just used to love, I can call him up and just go, Carter. He just knows instantly who it is. Different personalities. You mentioned, again, a great story about Gino. So that's inspiring. But with Dion Krupe, he always had the voice. He came out of his mother's womb with the voice to coach. And I won't use the F word, but anyway, so I'm running a faculty clinic. And again, added value, exceed expectations. We're running a faculty clinic, Tyler Junior College. And we're at 8 courts on the bottom, and then there's 4 courts on the top, and there was a parking lot and athletic field in between. And we're playing music. I don't think we do as much of that as we did back in the 80s. We're playing music on the court. Dion, he must have been a little stressed with a late contact point on the forehand, and I just hear him yell out, "Turn off the effing music!" And so I no one else even heard it, but I heard it. I just got radar. I've been in the kid business since I was a kid. So I called the faculty yard, blew a whistle. I said, "Excuse me 1 second." I said, "I'm going to yell." And I just yelled. The music was still playing. I go, "Groupie, get down here." But I took him off to the side. The faculty never knew what was going on. But I think also a title. I mean, he's been at it for so long. I mean, senior specialist, whatever the word should be, senior veteran. There should be that type of word. What would be great in a perfect world is that someone like that who has years and years, talk about earning your stripes, is that if you could rotate. So if he was doing a clinic or a squad, a session, whatever you call it, because I think the younger coaches need to have that in perspective. Even though you're on the same staff, and if this guy's been doing it, and it's not always just measured in years and case studies, but it's so much experience that the younger coaches need to circulate around the older coaches. And there was a period in my life when I was 20 years old, in my early 20s. Wayne Saban was a top 10 player in the world, and I'm hanging out with Wayne Saban. He's 70 and I'm 20, and we're buddies. So we're hanging out each day at the tennis courts. But that word senior, how does it work with titles at your place?
Yeah, he's actually listed as a senior staff. I don't know if I have a title myself. I kind of, I do remember, it's funny. I mean, I do remember being like really, one of those people who wanted a title and all that. But I can vividly remember Billy Freer when I got there, and he said, well, because Dave Ware was still there as well, and Dave was the head pro, and Billy goes, well, we can't, really call you the head pro because Dave's there. And I do remember saying to Billy, I really don't care what's on my name tag, for 2 reasons. One, I had a pretty good picture of what we were going to do there. Number 2, I never wear my name tag. So, I'm the worst in the world at wearing the name tag. I need to do a better job of that because it is a policy. But, Dion is a senior staff. And more importantly than the name tag saying it, I think that the other pros certainly recognize it.
I remember I have so much respect for Julian Krinsky, such a smart guy. I one time was at the PTR speaking. He was speaking, so I went into his presentation and came in a little bit late. So he introduces me, and it was very flattering. He said, "What we provide is an experience. What Steve provides is an education." And so one time Julie was saying, "Well, all my guys want a title." He goes, "I don't have a title." I go, "Well, Julian, it's the Julian Krinsky School of Tennis." So yeah. But I do think sometimes it's not just a title, but what's the job description? I don't say it to be demeaning, but sometimes you look out the window and the person who's pushing the lawnmower, I certainly did hours and hours of that. You know what your job is. And I think sometimes what happens with administrators is they end up having so many responsibilities is they forget that they're in the tennis business, and they grow away from that. With one thing years ago, Bill Tim, he was the voice of the USPTA, great speaker. He was a very great player. For the longest time, his name would come up because it was Tony Trabert won the French in 55. And it was in 68, I think Tim got to like the third round of the French. Maybe it was the fourth round, but whatever it was, was the American between 55 when Trabert won in 68. No American had gone farther than Bill Tim. And then in, I think, 89, Michael Chang, I have to get our fact checker, Andres Barbosa, on that. It was 89, I believe, is the year that Michael Chang won the French. But Bill Tim, what he would do with, say, someone in your position, the head pro, if you want a lesson from the head pro, you have to put so many hours in the clinic or say the afternoon training session, and then to work with the assistant pro. And that was back in the day, and he was very structured where he would have a 3x5 card on what each person was working on. This is what you need to do on your backhand. This is what you need to do on your forehand. How does that work at your place where obviously there's how many players overall? 200 plus?
Yeah, a couple hundred players probably.
And
but I think people do. We're trying to do a better job with through the door kind of assessment. I know you do a very thorough assessment. We're not quite at that level, but we try to do a good assessment right away with the parents involved. That way, there's a lot smoother entry, at least into our program, and you kind of find out early on if it's going to be a good fit or whether it'll probably not be a good fit. And, and then we basically try to place them with somebody. Not always how it is. Kids often are asked by their parents, who do you want to take a lesson with? And the kid doesn't necessarily pick the coach that would be more conducive to helping them obtain their goals. It might be just the opposite, really. So we try to help pair up accordingly. The pros that are heading up particular areas of the program, we try to get the kids that are inside of that area with them. Andres does a lot, as do I. Dion do a lot of the work within the high performance and individually with people. And I think that there's some strength in that because it helps keep the message clear. We interchange. For instance, James Lang, who you sent here, and spent time with Richard Bodian up there in New York, and James works with myself a couple of days, works with Andreas a couple of days, but the message is always clear and consistent. So we kind of, there's no particular system we have on it, but we just try to, gut instinct it as to what will be in the best interest of the student.
With compensation, I've always said that, you would work just as hard no matter how you were paid. So, years ago, Mr. Hopman, he'd have his golf cart and he would go court to court. And you're really working with the coaches when you go court to court. But many times you're tied to a private lesson, correct?
Yeah, not during program though.
Okay.
There have been periods where that was the case, but not anymore.
So of 200 kids, that's a lot of kids. And how many those kids do you know by name?
I know most of the students, I think, by name. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not 200 a night. We
Right.
have about 100 kids. We have about 100 kids a day that run through the facility from start to finish. And yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of a selfish interest in early childhood now because my grandkids are in it, and I really enjoy taking time and just watching that unfold. fun for me, to appreciate the job that Mary Poe does out there with her team of, 5, 6 pros with those little kids. And it's a tough job.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. That's something that we've touched upon in these podcasts is a lot of people don't want to go anywhere near a beginner. That'd be like someone who's a reading teacher say, "Well, I only work with advanced readers. I don't work with slow readers." You should be able to work with everyone. To me, if you can't teach a beginner, hello, I don't think you can teach.
And one thing on that part of the program that we've done that's been, and I'd encourage everybody to do it, is we have some of our older juniors come out in the afternoon for that hour, and 2 or 3 of them each session, and basically they are there to do everything from pick up balls, which when you pick up balls at that age, you lose them, and they help a pro do whatever they may need to do, and then bathroom breaks. Because as you know, you can be in the middle of it and all of a sudden the kid's standing there looking at you funny, and a 5-year-old, and boom. So we use our high performance group kids to come out and take part in that. And it's been a huge thing that I think has helped us be a little bit more effective, but also it's teaching those other older kids to give back, because as we know, it's a culture that can teach them to take, not give.
No, that's so well put. Let's do this. Ivan's at the table for a number of reasons. One, he's way smarter than I am too. If I have a senior moment, he pulls me back. But why don't you write down some highlights from this, or go through, you've been writing highlights, to go through that, and we can work towards adios amigos here. What do you got?
Yeah, I got some highlights here from just writing them down. Not in any order, just what I enjoyed from listening to you too. Thank you. A sound system based on efficiency. Unsung heroes are the pro shop personnel, the heartbeat of a tennis center. A family as solid as a rock. A $5 lesson is much more expensive than a $20 lesson. Texan pollen. If your car's outside, it's green. An assistant pro is a head pro in the making. Research, steel baby steel. Steve Jobs never suffered a fool twice. Competitive training is recreational training, just at a slower pace. Always try to add value, always try to exceed expectations. If you let it slide, it'll become an avalanche. Put the fires out right away. Ankle biters and nose pickers. Certification is not education. If you're thinking, you're stinking. If you don't use it, you lose it. Stepping stone job versus career building job. The most important lesson is the person right in front of you now. I want to play college tennis. Yeah, well, I want to be in the NBA. If you can't teach a beginner, you can't really teach.
Oh, thanks. Those are some, hopefully, what we call golden nuggets. Going back to memory, just hearing that one comment was the Vic Braden story. Coming back to that so David Hartman hit some golf balls and getting his arrows out there. So they have the slow motion footage. I didn't say that Gideon flew back to New York, and like 2 days later, after Hartman was back, he was on Good Morning America going through the biomechanics of David Hartman's golf swing, President Gerald Ford, and then Jack Nicklaus. I have Nicholas. Yes, I have to get that right. I should get that right. I grew up with a family of golfers. Actually, Bob Drum, my age, Bob Drum Sr. in this little town, Casanova, New York. It's just hard to believe that Mark McCormick, he was the first sports agent, and Arnold Palmer was his first client. And again, Casanova is a little postcard, I guess you say screensaver now. It's a little town in upstate New York. And so I come home from school and, hey, met Bob Drum. And my father goes, that's a familiar name, Bob Drum. And, so then hanging out with him, he was Arnold Palmer's ghostwriter, living in Casanova, New York. Amazing. With administration, I have down attendance. And I do think too many times there's reasons for the person who's in charge of the finances just be counting numbers, counting heads. But it has to, I've been in so many meetings where administrators, it's never about the forehand and backhand. It's all about money. And I think that's a problem. I understand it has to be about money. There has to be a business plan, but there's a product. If there's a product, that means there's product knowledge. If that means you can produce a service motion. You should have, entry-level players that have a nice service motion from a very young age. But attendance, Texas A&M, and I think we've really gone away from this. I can't say now what's it like on college campuses with how PE classes are taught. But at Texas A&M, just as far as attendance, I go on many different directions just with this one thought. But they had all these backboards. Did you ever go to A&M when we were training tennis teachers? Did you ever make that trip?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. So they had, I think they had 36 courts, and they weren't in the best shape. They weren't the varsity courts. Now what they have is just mind-boggling. They still don't have an indoor center, but with so A&M, I asked the person in charge. I said, how that happened is I taught Laura Hannah how to play. She became a player at A&M, and then they had an interim coach, and so then I started helping out the interim coach. And next thing I know, it was a great experience. For several years, we went and trained the PE teachers for a long weekend. So there's all these numbers on the backboard. Like, what are those numbers for? And they said, that's how they take attendance. So each backboard had 24 numbers. So the PE teacher would blow their whistle, and you had to line up in front of the number. So if number 19, no one was standing there, they could take attendance so fast. I mean, that's, to me, like, wow, we need to go back to that type of energy. It's like, okay, we're going to get the attendance done because we want to make the class as productive as possible. Someone who's become a great administrator, and I think of attendance, is Craig Tiley. And I've certainly been in situations where it's like you have so much help. We teach everyone to teach tennis. And when we were training people to be tennis teachers, it was like, okay, this is great. To have student assistants who want to be tennis teachers, there's a big plus to that versus having student teachers who want to be players. So we used to have it marked down attendance, and we would have at the end of the year. And I understand parents, especially if they have multiple siblings, they can't always be on time. But it's just amazing. If people are late, they're like always late. And then at the end of the year, be able to tell people what their attendance records are. And certainly that ties in with the business of tennis, but it also ties in with the player development side of it. With attendance, the other thing is a story that was a positive for you is attendance policy. Do you remember that attendance policy, Anderson?
Yeah, I have a couple of stories about the attendance policy at Tyler Junior College.
Well, I'll tell you my story. I'll tell you my story first, or should you go first?
Well, I imagine they're about the same, but go ahead.
Yeah, I would think they're the same. So I show up. I went to Tyler, Texas, from where Yvonne grew up, out in Orange County, and California casual. I wasn't even taking attendance. And my ego wasn't so big. People were blowing off my class, but when Vandermeer showed up and people were blowing off class, I'd go, wait a minute. Come on. We have Dennis Vandermeer. I can understand where you sleep in. I'm 26, 27 years old. You're not coming to my class. So I was told when I got there that what was recommended is 6 absences and you dropped. And 2 tardies equaled 1 absence. But I didn't even take attendance. I said, no, but they told you could do it any way you wanted. So with yourself is that you had a number of tardies, and so you were dropped from a class. And then the best part of this story is so you couldn't take you didn't complete that course, so you couldn't get the degree. And
yeah, it was in late March of it was March 11th at noon, and
yeah, but
it was about 8 weeks out from graduating.
But the thing is that the door would be locked. The bell would ring and the door would be locked. I mean, I had it where, talk about going from casual, but the students are the ones that created the rules. So everybody had a assigned seat, and then I had a tripod with a camera, and so attendance was taken by a student assistant, and because you had assigned seat, just like you get these ideas from the Texas A&M backboard. Like, boom, let's take attendance fast. This is where you're supposed to sit because we want to teach. Like Braden, one of his pet peeves was someone would say, well, we're going to cover next time. He says, don't do that. Just teach to the final bell. Just teach. So, but you, like Dion, you had the ability to coach. I mean, you had so much ability when you showed up. I mean, obviously, you needed to learn the information. I can remember when you had to do your 3-minute demo. You remember that? I happened to be in the room when you did it. So what we would do is that students would have to go in this room, and I could just remember, like, when you did it, you know, it was in the stringing room. We set it up where everybody had to stand up on the stage. It was like, you know, a foot off the ground, and a camera was pointed at you, and you just had a name was pulled out of the hat. So Steve Young was the administrator, the organizer of that. Was a teaching pro in Philadelphia. So he pulls it out, and Anderson gets backhand. And he had the sense of humor when he got there. So Anderson, we don't need humor. We need 3 minutes on how you teach the backhand. So then what happened was I had got him. We filmed their strokes when they got there, but plus we also filmed. And we're going to do that here at a club in a few weeks. We go, no, we just point the camera at the pro and go, tell us how you teach the forehand. I mean, I could go on forever. You and I, one time, were a group of people, and an established coach was, anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions? And the guy was just about to say how he goes, well, let me tell you how I teach a serve. And then you interrupted with a question. You remember getting reprimanded for that?
Yeah, he was going to teach how to hit the overhead.
Because it was like,
it was Gary Seymour. I don't mind saying his name. He was, I just ran into him at Billy Freer's funeral. We ended up becoming friends. Yeah. Well, he was a good guy.
With Gary Seymour, all these different questions, this is the way it works. Craig Tiley would not be the CEO of Tennis Australia if it wasn't for Russell Seymour. Russell Seymour lives in Tyler, Texas. He's a great senior player, comes in to run Holly Tree, a new country club. And, you know, I saw him not too long ago. He was still playing the age groups. You know, I think he was in the 80s. I was at a
I ran into Russell. He still looks good.
Yeah. So, he's so gracious. He called me up and said, hey, because we had quite a few kids who could hit the ball well. And he asked me for permission to give playing lessons. Now, only a few of the kids could afford that, but so that's how he was in charge of the director of tennis in South Africa. So then that's how we had kids from South Africa come over, because it was, the politics. At one point, the local coaches, they wouldn't let their players hit with our juniors. And I said, well, okay. Well, I knew it was a bad financial move, but what I did was I brought in players. So we had like a John Lavna Diaga, a Jeff Coetzee, who later went on to become Davis Cup players. And that's how Tiley got connected with Davis Cup. And that's how he got connected with international tennis. But that was I remember Gary Seymour was going to do that, because it was like, hey, let's, instead of asking questions, let's observe people teaching. So anyway, Anderson gets dropped from this class. The part of the story for me was the next year, I made you a lab assistant, even though you didn't get the degree. And this comes back to Mike Carter. Mike Carter, he was our stringer. He was teaching 100 people to string rackets. Not a fun job. He had the personality for it. So he has to go home because his father's not in good shape. And so in the middle of the year, Jay Huffer, great guy. To be a lab instructor, he had to have the 2-year specialized degree. But Anderson didn't have it. But I knew that the administrator, I was going to put the paperwork in. I knew Anderson didn't have a 2-year degree, but I just wanted to have the best lab assistants I could have. And so I knew that I was going to get reprimanded. It was just going to be called in, and I was just going to be told, boom, boom, you did this wrong. And then, but you were in, so I said, it was worthy of being reprimanded to have you be a lab assistant. So, but you could comment on that.
Well, we just had to get through that first semester, because I remember I had to take that course the first semester and get that done to get the 2-year degree.
If it was March 11th, it would have been the second semester, because you could only take the class.
Maybe it was this.
But no,
maybe it was the second.
No, so you got to be.
But it was spring break, yeah.
But
what I remember most about that, it was a great I mean, to me, I think you learn, whether people always say you learn more from failure. I think you just got to learn that. I certainly knew what I was walking into when I got on an airplane. I remember I took Jenna out to San Diego to meet my mom and dad, and I came back and I had missed a day. Actually, is what it was. It wasn't a tardy. It was a day. I exceeded it by a day, but I remember because Tylee was already helping out on as a student assistant, and so Steve had Tylee deliver the note to me, and Tylee I thought was going to start crying because we were pretty close and he didn't want to do it, and Tylee handed this thing to me, and I swear to God I thought he was going to start crying, and I opened it up and I said, "Hey, it's not your fault, it's mine." And, I knew when I got on that airplane to San Diego, it was almost like I drew a line in the sand with Steve saying, "Yeah, you're going to drop me. Have you ever seen my hair?" and then I got back and boom. But, I think it's a funny thing, because, I don't think it was a no-brainer to me. Boom. And then when I had the chance, it turned out, a few weeks after, asked to be on helping out on staff there, and it was like, yeah, no brainer. But I think it's funny because I'm surprised people tank so often in those situations. They just like the world comes to an end instead of just like, hey, I screwed up. Let's make the best of it from here and go forward. And
but I was very confident that anybody who stayed there longer was going to do better. That's just the way it worked. That's just the way it worked. And then you ended up because you married a gal from that area and you ran 2 clubs in that area, but I was confident that would work. But when I think of attendance and I think administrators, it has to be more than going to a meeting. And again, there's 2 sides to every story. I think hats off to what people do behind the scenes, and the tennis teacher, they many times will be negative and not really understand the business side of tennis. But yeah, I just think that too many meetings are just on bean counters and how much money are we making. But the attendance, to be present too. I think that's one thing, is that people are they putting in time, but then are they putting in effort? And that's just one form of measurement. I think everything to be recorded. I'm not so big on recording scores, but I think you have to do that. So many times with parents, like who played with who, but write down what was their time on the beep test, just to measure all of that. And it should be academic. I tell parents and players I meet with is that I think private coaches many times are just noise. The college coach, that connection between the bench and the brain. So you keep telling, that's where the college coach and say, well, yeah, maybe I'll give you a scholarship. Maybe I'll give you a guaranteed spot on the team. Maybe I'll put you in the lineup. But that Steve Jobs, I'm glad that line came up. I love that one. He never suffered a fool twice. Is that just like, hey, I told you once, told you twice. And then, that's was one of the negatives of the USSR, the Soviet sports system, but it was also one of the positives. You don't show the right effort, you lose your opportunity in sport. But I think that's where in tennis too many times people can coast. Okay, anything else? Who wants to wrap this up? Yvonne, anything else to say?
Adios, amigos. That's a good one.
I like that one. David, why don't you sign us off with this? The do's and don'ts, players, parents, coaches, and now administrators.
Well, I think that each one has had a unique theme, but I by no means try to belittle any of the categories we're going through. I've certainly experienced a little bit more in the coaching end than any of the others. The admin role tonight, the director's role tonight, it's a critical part of our business, and we just want to try to do what's best for tennis, and hopefully a few of these ideas will fall somewhere and maybe plant some seeds and grow from there. But appreciate anybody that's listening. And look, I know Steve does too, but I always welcome feedback, whether you agree or disagree. So feel free to contact me directly too. If you want to shoot me down or pat me on the back, it doesn't matter, but feel free.
How do people get a hold of you?
How do they shoot you down, huh?
What's that?
I asked, how do they shoot you down, Dave, if they wanted to?
Usually in the back, but yeah, they can reach me.
They just get your photo at the post office, right? Most wanted.
Yeah,
The criminal of Dallas.
Milk cartons, post office. Yeah,
the criminal of Dallas.
And go to Brookhaven and get on the website, david.anderson@invitedclubs.com. I have an official Invited Clubs email now, david.anderson@invitedclubs.com. Feel free to reach out. But it's a pleasure for me to be on here. Steve, I owe you a lot. The 22%. I wouldn't. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's 22.2 plus whatever income Jen has made. Your wife, that's 11.1. Because if you hadn't met me, she wouldn't have married you. That's how that goes.
That's true. I can get you the 0.2%. 0.2. The 22 might be a work, but yeah. Anyways, it's always appreciated.
I just need to visit and get one of those nice Brookhaven hoodies. Those are cool.
I'll get you and Yvonne one. We have a new logo now, so you're due for a new one.
Yeah, we need to come visit. We're going to consolidate our schedule here at Wintergreen and be here for. It's really nice up here in the mountain, cool in the summertime. Lots of clay courts, but I think certainly after the summer we're going to travel and do workshops. But what we want to be able to do with the workshops is do a better job, just getting out content. The world of social media. Just try to, and you do have to tell people over and over again. I mean, that's the way you and I learned is you got to hear it over and over again. So we got to find a way to try to help tennis teaching more. But David, thank you very, very much.
Yep.
Gentlemen,
thank you.
Yeah, we got to come back and go through that Seguzo Bassett. That's a story, boy. That academy.
Yeah.
That experience. There's
that'd be a good one.
But no, we've talked about too, going back. Many people have told us they like these long formats, and I know I'm going to be on a podcast in another couple of days, and it's like a 35-minute podcast, and that's fine. There's so many different platforms. I think Andy Fitzell with a lot of the 1-minute Instagram posts, and I know you and others are putting out content. We put up something the other day. It was fun. I watched a match from Brookhaven, and it was Mason Vaughn was playing.
Yeah,
and, I watched like 30 minutes of it when I was walking, and so I just when we have film, we keep so they came to work with us in Tennis Memphis with George, the grandfather, and Holt. What a great family, and but it was just a review tape of technique, and it's great that he's progressed where he's ranked top 10 in the country. And that's good.
Yeah, I can see his house from my window right now, and I'll be picking him up in the golf cart at 5:45 in the morning. He lives right next door, so I pull over and he jumps out at his house, and boom, we're on the court. He's doing a good job. Lot to work on still.
I sent a note to his dad. The dad sent me a thank you note. So did the mom, and with that post we put up, it'd be great to. It's not simple, but if he could go spend 6-8 weeks on the European clay. What is he last year? 14s?
Yeah, last year. Age is up in August.
Oh, really?
I think that's in the works. Yeah.
It's always good. All right, Anderson.
Okay.
We should get Freddie Foreman on and have a real podcast. Get the best tennis teacher from your elementary school.
You might. He went to a different one.
Yeah, I
was a Northville Golden Eagle. He was a Longfellow loser.
Yeah, but
that's who we called Longfellow.
He went to the one for achievers, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
He was a grinder. I miss him. Yeah.
Freddie, he's got good hair.
Do it.
He's got good hair, but he got a haircut. You never should have got a haircut. All right, Anderson. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you too.
Yes. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments on that? Make it short and sweet. You can make it. How's it go? I won't make it try to make it short and sweet, but it's not going to be sweet. It's going to be short.
Yeah.
Any comments? Amazing though, huh?
Oh, it's good. Just grateful to be sitting here listening to you too. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Podcast 190 something. Here we go. Keep on going. All right. Thanks everybody. Adios.
Adios.